Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to unpack a truly captivating textbook excerpt to explore the masterful world building and honestly, the profound moral philosophy hidden right inside the pages of classic children's literature. We'll be looking at a fascinating story about the land of Oz, specifically focusing on the Emperor's Tin Castle. It's kind of amazing just how much depth, imagination, and ethical teaching can be packed into a single reading lesson. So let's jump right into this metallic wonderland.
Let's kick things off with a quick thought experiment. Imagine you're walking along, you see a magical door, and it's just slightly open. Would you go in? It really prompts you to think about visiting this completely unknown land with strange animals, maybe finding hidden treasure, or even standing face to face with a dragon. It perfectly sets that imaginative, adventurous tone for the journey we're about to take. So would you step through? Keep that curiosity in the back of your mind as we cross the threshold into our story.
All right, let's dive right in. Our story centers around Dorothy, a girl who absolutely loves a good adventure. Right now, she's traveling from a place called Butterfield straight toward the magical land of Oz. Her ultimate destination? The famous Emerald City. But, as we all know with any great adventure, it's not just about the destination, right? It's about the incredible, totally unexpected things you stumble upon along the way.
Now, Dorothy gathers an incredibly unique group of friends on this journey. We're definitely not talking about your average travel group here. She's joined by the Shaggy Man, a little boy named Button Bright, who, yes, looks bright as a button, and the Rainbow's Daughter. Oh, and then there's Mr. Tick-Tock. I absolutely love this detail from the text. Mr. Tick-Tock literally has to be wound up like a clock just to be able to talk and think. Imagine traveling with a guy you occasionally have to pause and wind up just to finish a conversation. Together, this wonderfully bizarre motley crew makes their way toward the Emerald City.
So as they're traveling, this eclectic group passes through Winky Country. And who happens to be the Emperor of the Winkies? None other than the Tin Woodman himself. He lives in this massive, grand tin castle. The text describes him as a wonderful person, completely made of tin, who loves everyone and is loved by everyone in return. When Dorothy and her friends reach the grand entrance, the Tin Woodman comes running out to enthusiastically greet his guests. And there's this really charming detail. Dorothy is totally astonished and delighted because right there in the garden, among the flower beds and fountains, she finds a tin statue of herself. It's such a sweet testament to how deeply the Emperor values his friends.
Once they're all inside, the Tin Woodman proudly shows his visitors around. He points out that his castle is incredibly hard to match, but he gives all the credit to the Winkies. He proudly calls them the cleverest tinsmiths in the world. And if you aren't familiar with the term, a tinsmith is simply someone who makes or repairs things out of tin. So, the Emperor isn't taking the credit for this magnificent structure at all. He's celebrating the unparalleled craftsmanship of his people. And let me tell you, that craftsmanship is everywhere. The world building here is so thorough. The Tin Woodman shows off the rooms, and the text emphasizes that every single piece of furniture is made of brightly polished tin. We are not just talking about some metallic accents here. The tables, the chairs, the beds, and even the floors and the walls themselves are completely made of tin. It paints this picture of a shining wonderland that must just be dazzling, catching the sunlight at every possible angle. But here is where the story shifts from a cool visual fantasy into a pretty profound moral philosophy. Dorothy's friend, the Shaggy Man, remarks that such a magnificent castle must have cost a ton of money. And that sets up a stark comparison between our real world and the land of Oz. In our world, we use money for everything, and wealth dictates a lot. But in Oz, money is completely unheard of. There are no rich people, no poor people. The entire economy, if you can even call it that, is driven by kindness. If someone wants something, others simply try to give it to them to make them happy. No one wants for more than they need, and the society operates purely on love and a desire to help one another. The whole point is perfectly captured in this bold declaration by the Tin Woodman. He says, "We would be no better than the rest of the world if we used money to buy things with." Think about how powerful that is for a moment. Through the lens of a fantasy story, the author is teaching a core value, elevating kindness, generosity, and mutual care way above materialism and financial wealth. It really challenges the reader to think about what actually makes a society better.
And we see this philosophy of generosity put into action almost immediately. The Emperor invites everyone to their rooms to dress up for a grand dinner in the tin dining hall. The hospitality is just overflowing. During the feast, Dorothy eats her food from a tin plate. In fact, all the dishes are tin, but they're polished so perfectly that they shine exactly like real silver.
It's this beautiful visual representation of how something ordinary, like tin, can be elevated to something truly extraordinary when it's crafted with care and shared with good company.
But the generosity definitely doesn't stop at the food or the shining plates. What pleased the guests the most was the entertainment. An incredible all-tin orchestra playing sweet music while they ate. The musicians weren't magical beings, they were just ordinary Winkies. But the instruments they played were constructed entirely out of tin. The text specifically lists tin trumpets, tin fiddles, tin drums, as well as flutes and horns. Just imagine the resonant, metallic acoustics of a fiddle or a drum made completely out of tin. It's a total feast for the senses.
It's a literal orchestra, a large group of musicians playing perfectly together to create this magical musical experience. It's such a seamless way to ground the fantastical events of the story into a beautiful shared moment of art and celebration for the characters. Which brings up a fantastic question for us to consider. The Emperor organized this wonderful dinner for Dorothy and her friends, so what does this tell you about him? Take a second to think about that based on everything we've explored so far. I think it tells us that his heart, even if it is literally made of tin, is full of warmth. He's a gracious host who prioritizes the happiness of his friends. He uses his resources not to hoard wealth, but to create joy, share music, and build community. After spending a wonderful evening sharing stories, the Tin Woodman actually offers to join Dorothy on her journey to meet Princess Ozma. Dorothy is thrilled to have another friend tag along, so the next morning, they set off. And this brilliantly illustrates the Emperor's status and the sheer spectacle of Oz. As the Winkies gather to cheer him on, he marches off into the sunlight carrying his axe. But this is no ordinary axe. It has a sharp tin blade, sure, but the handle is covered with carved tin sheets heavily set with diamonds. Talk about a striking image of fantastical royalty heading down the yellow brick road. Before we wrap up, let's briefly pull back the curtain and look at the architect of this incredible world. L. Frank Baum was an American author who lived from 1856 to 1919. He was chiefly known for his children's books, most notably penning The Wonderful Wizard of Oz in the early 1900s. He went on to write a whole famous series of books on the land of Oz, including The Road to Oz, which is the exact book this excerpt is adapted from. He even turned his famous story into a stage play. His legacy of world-building is still capturing our imaginations over a century later. So let's see how all of this builds to the emotional core of the story. After hearing the Tin Woodman explain how Oz operates entirely on love and kindness instead of money, the Shaggy Man happily cries out, "The land of Oz is surely the best land in all the world, and its people are the happiest people. I would always like to live here." This quote perfectly encapsulates the appeal of Baum's creation. It's not just the magic or the diamond-studded axes that make Oz wonderful. It's the profound, foundational happiness of a society built on mutual care. Which brings us to our final thought for today. We started this explainer by imagining a slightly open magical door. Through it, we found a society with no rich, no poor, where people simply give to make each other happy. It really forces us to ask, could a world built entirely on kindness, giving, and mutual love ever exist outside that magical door? Can we apply the utopian ideals of Oz to our own reality? It's a pretty fascinating question to ponder as we close the book on the Emperor's Tin Castle today. Thank you so much for joining me, and keep exploring.